Welcome to Probate Problems and Practical Solutions.
Welcome back to Probate Problems and Practical Solutions with Carly Whiteside, owner of Copper Wren Law in Mesa, Arizona. Copper Wren Law focuses on probate litigation, guardianship, conservatorship, and trust administration across the state. Joining Carly today is Scott Fischer, founder of Options for Senior Living. Scott has spent more than 30 years working in healthcare and senior services, including nursing administration, mental health, and senior care consulting. Through his work with families across Arizona, he helps guide people through the complex decisions involved in finding appropriate care and support for aging loved ones. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we're talking about the kinds of challenges families face when an aging loved one begins needing more care and support. For listeners who may not have worked with a senior resource professional before, can you explain what you do and the role you play in helping seniors and their families, Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Hi, Carly. It's good to be here today. We as senior referral and placement specialists we serve a middle role. We stand between senior living and senior living providers and families that are in need of finding the right long-term care solutions. So we provide a free guidance service to families. We're paid by a referral fee or commission structure with the senior living providers. We match the care needs, the priorities that's identified in our intake assessment that we do with the family. And then we provide kind of a step-by-step hand-holding experience for families to literally walk them through the various choices and options that they have when they're going about selecting a long-term care facility for their loved one. There's a lot about senior living that most people don't know, or they don't know how to check to see how they're in standing with the state of Arizona and Department of Health Services. So we do a lot of background checks. We have a lot of inside information that families find helpful when they go to pick the right long-term care for their loved ones.
What typically brings families to you? Is there a common moment or situation where they realize they need help?
Too often they call me when a crisis has occurred. Something critical has gone down. The family members had a change in healthcare condition, a hospitalization, a fall, a break, something significant's happened. And so now it propels them into action. When you look at the situation, in most cases in families, these sudden events don't happen in a vacuum. There's been things happening along the way before the crisis occurs. So we really talk to people a lot about reaching them before the crisis and having an expert or somebody come in and take a look at the situation. It's always easier to make these transitions when there isn't a crisis and when families get to pick what they would like their long-term care to look like, as opposed to now having something happen to them once an event has happened. And so those things might include like a diagnosis of dementia, maybe some sudden acute onset of illness like delirium, or there's been a fall, a fracture, a surgery. And those things are usually what drives, unfortunately, the placement, and families have to accept the fact that their loved one can't live at home any longer.
Carly, what are some of the most common challenges families face when a parent or loved one begins needing more support?
Nobody knows where to start. And so they'll call Scott, they'll call me, they'll call an estate planning attorney, they'll call, an in-home care provider. The worst part of all this is people just don't know where to turn. They don't know who to call, they don't know what they need. As Scott said, it's sudden. It's when things happen. He and I typically don't get calls until it's not too late, but we're in the thick of it. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult to navigate, but as far as people trying to figure out what's needed, there's a lot that goes into it. Like Scott touched on, it's what level of care are they needing right now? Does it look like they're going to need a higher level at some point? So does it make sense for him to look for a facility that has those different levels so that way they can stay at the same location and just move between the wings? So there's a lot that goes into when it starts, and then the ongoing care and maintenance. And then, he and I, our jobs is to try to address what's happening now, and then also plan for potentially how this future is going to go and what we're going to anticipate that they need. That way, in 6, 9, 12 months, they don't come back to us in a panic saying, well, what about this now? He and I have kind of already done um, some future planning for these scenarios.
So, Scott, what are some early signs that a family should start exploring senior resources or support services?
Yeah, there's a number of things, and I'll just kind of make a list for you if that's all right. I would say um, when they start missing the idea of paying their bills or taking care of their household responsibilities, failure to make their medical appointments or utilizing the emergency department on a more regular basis. I tell families all the time, I said, hey, if your mom or dad knows the name of the fire department, the guys on what days they work and when they come to pick people up, because too often our families are calling the fire department for the first response all the time. I mean, just in the greater Phoenix area last year, there were over 80,000 lift assist calls that our fire departments collectively answered the call and ran the trucks out to people's houses. So people are calling the fire department and using emergency services all the time. So that's a big one. Their medication management becomes a real challenge. Too often, our seniors have various providers writing prescriptions, and so some of those prescriptions are getting filled or not getting filled. They're not taking their medicines on a regular time. That's an issue. Transportation or the lack thereof becomes a problem. Isolation and depression, changes in mood become an issue. Um, the household maintenance is a problem, and of course personal hygiene. And so too often when family members, or maybe they haven't seen each other a number of months, and they come in for Thanksgiving or Christmas and they see this stuff in their loved ones or their parents' homes, these are indicators, warning signs that something's changing in their ability of their parents to manage their own life.
So, Carly, we often see families coming to professionals during a crisis. From your perspective, how does the experience differ when families plan ahead versus when decisions have to be made quickly?
Well, there is the emotional side of it. Everybody's heightened. So I have found that when I have people that come in a crisis scenario, it's a lot harder to relay information where they retain it. You can tell them multiple times, but they just don't remember because they're so amped up. So communication becomes an issue from our side of, hey, this is our next steps. This is what it's going to cost. And people will come back a week later and act like we never had a conversation. And so that's an issue. Anytime there's an emergency in the legal world, it is going to be 2 to 3 times more expensive. There's much more paperwork. There's extra, emergency hearings, notice, stuff like that, where it jacks the cost up. Whereas when somebody comes in and they've done maybe some estate planning, they have powers of attorney, then it's more about management and guidance and directing them without having to involve the court, without having to potentially, get somebody appointed who has the authority. It turns more into, hey, I don't know what I don't know, and here's what's going on. What should I do next? And we can provide those steps. Scott can provide those steps. Whereas when we're in a crisis, it's and typically they don't give us a lot of time. I don't know about Scott, he can speak on this, but I know for my office, I have people call me the day of a hearing, the day before a hearing. And it's like, I know you've known about this hearing for at least 2 months because it's not an emergency hearing. And so the sooner you can get in front of stuff, the better. But that's just, and then there's situations where that's just not feasible. It does come undone like that. And so we have to step in and handle it. But yeah, it's the emotional and the fiscal cost skyrocket whenever we are in an active crisis type of scenario.
Anything you want to add to that, Scott?
Well, it's really we really, and there's two sides of this, and I call it the generational slugfest. You get the adult kids who may see these issues going on in their parents' lives, and they're trying to make an impact, or they're trying to make some change. Um, Unfortunately, our family, especially those adults that are from the silent generation, they survived World War II. They survived the Great Depression. So they're insanely proud. They're insanely private, almost combative in terms of denial sometimes. I mean, and the family pushback is real. And so even though the kids may see these issues, you got parents that are still so adamant about they're independent. Well, here's what's happening. They're 90 years old. They're not getting younger. The train's going that direction. And so to get people to accept aging and the realities of aging and that we're all on some sort of a timeline would be really helpful. And I get everybody's gung ho about preserving their health and staying strong and healthy as long as they can. Absolutely. We're really about messaging people about aging in place safely and successfully more than moving people out. So that's why we'd like to talk to people before the crisis and help break down some of that generational slugfest that's going on. So that's my perspective on that.
Right. And Scott, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that families have about senior care options or resources, maybe causing that slugfest a little bit?
Well, senior living itself. So when I say senior living, and I'm referring to that, I'm talking about what we call assisted living, and there's various forms of assisted living. There's corporate assisted living with big apartments and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, there's these small residential homes. Families are not prepared. They do not have the right expectations most of the time. So what kind of care these folks provide? Unfortunately, and this is for care, this is for cost issues. Um, Even though people get sticker shock when they hear it's 5,000 a month or 7,000 a month to live in assisted living, the reality is these are largely non-clinical people taking care of people who have complex clinical needs. So you have non-licensed people handing them out medications and managing medication care. There's one nurse for 90 people in a building. So helping people understand what's really being provided for in assisted living. I mean, I know they feel like they're paying 7, 8,000, 9,000 a month, and they should get excellent care. The reality of it is you have um, folks that are providing that care, and they're at a lesser trained level than what most people expect or think. Another misconception people have or misunderstanding they have is that referral and placement agents um, act and actually enter the picture oftentimes from a referral from the discharge planners or the hospital case manager. And we just had this situation recently where folks are actually thinking that the placement agent is actually a member of the staff at the facility. That's not true at all. And so our friend who was in the middle of that thought that the case manager was actually arranging for the tours and then taking her on tours. We're like, no, you've got a placement agent in hand, and they're not disclosing all that up front. The placement industry is an unlicensed, mostly unregulated space, and so if anyone is working with or got referred to a referral and placement specialist like myself, man, there's a couple of things you want to find out. Are they a part of our local trade association? We call that passers, or the National Placement Referral Alliance. How long have they been in business? How many folks have they helped over the last 5 years, 10 years? And so you get all kinds of people because this is an unprotected space. You have vulnerable people that are receiving services from guys like me, and we aren't necessarily qualified or competent at what we do. That's for sure.
Wow, well, that's news to me as well. From your experience, how do professionals like senior resource specialists and estate or probate attorneys work together to help families navigate these situations more smoothly?
And oftentimes folks call me um, on a referral from the attorney or from the firm, and they're in the office in some sort of crisis, and of course the call comes our way. More and more together anymore, though we're trying to reach and do these kinds of education opportunities and reach people probably hopefully before the crisis. But once I get started, if I've gotten a referral from the attorney, once I meet with the family, I'll call and give them an update on what we've done and get permission from the family that I continue to collaborate and exchange information. In some attorneys, not with Carly's firm, but other attorneys often do Medicaid planning, or they do some financial planning as well. And if there's any of that involved, then we've got to be partners on the resources available, making sure that the selections that we're picking for the family are financially viable and sustainable. The worst thing you do is move somebody in and 6 months later, you didn't realize they're running out of money or they need a Medicaid plan. And so it's an ongoing thing. And of course, if there's a guardianship or a conservatorship unfolding, or there's a court hearing and all this, we've got to know so that the senior living facility knows who the new person of authority is going to be, if it's not the resident themselves. It's vital that the lines of communication stay open between me and the attorney themselves.
And from my perspective, when people come in, they are expecting me to kind of solve everything at once, even if it's not things that I do. And so it's great to have people like Scott, licensed fiduciaries that we can tag in. If family's not here, there's no one to act. And so I have found when they come to me, they're expecting me to be able to point them in the directions of kind of everything that offshoots from this. It's not just preparing the legal documents and getting people appointed. It's okay, well, now I need placement. Who do I call for that? Okay, none of us can do it. We need a fiduciary. Who do you know? And so my role is kind of, I feel like I'm the hub. And then all of the things that kind of come after this, I'm referring out and bringing people in that, share the same vision as my firm. They're out to help people because, as Scott mentioned, it is a crazy, unregulated wilderness. And I know in my just networking and being out there in the community, I have met placement people where I wouldn't let them place a dog. Like it's just rough. It's just tough. It is what it is. And so that's why, it's good to find those people again that share that vision and we can align with. And so when I give someone to Scott, I don't stare at the ceiling at night going, should I have done that? I know they're good. I'm like, no, you've got Scott. That's taken care of. Check that box. Okay, what's the next thing we need to do? And so for me, it's more about getting them where we need to go.
Yeah. And Carly, this, and not only placement isn't regulated, but the in-home private duty non-medical care companies are not regulated. You have care managers that are not regulated, patient advocates that are not regulated. There's a lot of people that are touching families, vulnerable families, and there is no license to be had. There's no oversight or accountability. So it's super important that, like Carly and my firm, we are working together constantly, and our resources. So if I've got another suggestion, if I go out to the house and see them, Carly, and I've got another suggestion I got to run that back by you because you're involved in that. If I'm thinking that, hey, we need a care manager, or let's get some home care in there first, let's be in alignment of what other resources we're bringing in for the bridge or the short term, or maybe as an alternative to placement, whatever. It's just critical because people are way too vulnerable and they're under pressure. So we have to be very, very careful about the kinds of resources and the people that we bring into the situation for the family.
Well, I appreciate your passion for all of this, both of you. And obviously, I've learned something here where we need to look at, is there some professional group? As we wrap up this episode, in just a few words, do either of you want to share one piece of advice that you would give to families who want to make things easier for their loved ones as they age? Carly?
I would say trust your gut. If you feel like things are not going well, if you feel like there's weird stuff, like Scott mentioned with, not getting a hold of family members, transportation, you visit and things are not as cleanly as they have been, they're not eating right. It's okay to start having that investigation, and it's okay to start trying to reach out to resources you might need in the future. And it's okay that your family is mad at you about it. It's okay that your family member is upset at you. Like Scott said, they're nobody wants to admit when they can't do something anymore, and that's just a human thing. And so I want to encourage people that even if it's a uncomfortable or tough situation, you're doing it for that person's benefit. And so you kind of have to gather your gumption and buck up a little bit and say, this is for the best for them. It may disturb my comfort, but this is what needs to happen. So that would be my kind of 2 cents on this.
I'll share with you what I've told my clients for decades, and I said this to my own mother. Mom, I never want to do anything to you. It's always with and for you. Until you make decisions that impact your safety, I want to honor you in everything we do, and it's always together. So I can't tell you how many dozens of times I told her that over 10 years. And even when it became near the end of her life last year, she was more feisty and more frustrated, and she was scared, right? She was losing it. But always with and for is my message to people. And so say that in love, say that frequently, say that often, so that you can start to have these conversations way before the crisis. Please have them that way.
I love that. Well, that is it for today's episode of Probate Problems and Practical Solutions with Carly Whiteside of Copper Wren Law. If you'd like to learn more about Scott Fischer and the work he does helping families navigate senior care decisions, visit optionsforseniorliving.com. To learn more about how Carly and her team help Arizona families navigate probate, guardianship, and trust administration, visit copperwrenlaw.com. Thank you for listening, and remember to subscribe, share, and leave a review so more families can find the guidance they need. Thank you, Scott and Carly.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.